It is late Wednesday, September 19th, and the Hurricane Center is monitoring a non-tropical low for any signs of subtropical or tropical development. It has a 40% chance of formation to the east of Bermuda, and we're also still tracking Tropical Storm Nadine, which has maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour. It's currently forecast to drift to the southeast away from the Azores Islands. After that, it becomes a question as to whether or not it becomes fully captured by a trough and becomes extratropical as it moves northeast, with the remnants moving toward Europe, or swings back to the southwest and eventually back to the northwest, but that is still something that we will have to closely watch for interest across the Azores. The Hurricane Center is also closely monitoring an area of low pressure in the eastern Pacific, and they give this feature a 30% chance of development as it continues to move west-northwest. As we begin our satellite tour with a look into the deep tropics, we can see that much of the sunshine state of Florida is dealing with isolated shower activity, and that's thanks to the presence of this styled out frontal boundary, but there are no signs of tropical development. A tropical wave is also interacting with the mountains of Hispaniola and the greater Antilles, but conditions are unfavorable there. And the same can be said for this tropical wave in the central Atlantic, which is interacting with a mid to upper level trough, so neither one of those two tropical waves are expected to develop. If we look more so into the mid and upper level latitudes, you can see Tropical Storm Nadine just to the immediate southwest of the Azores Islands, and we also have this non-tropical low that the Hurricane Center is monitoring to the east of Bermuda. As we turn on the water vapor imagery, you can clearly see that this is a non-tropical area of low pressure, but sometimes if they linger around very warm water temperatures for a prolonged period, convection can begin to develop near the center of the upper level low, and that is when subtropical storm formation could begin. Nevertheless, whatever comes about from this upper level low is unlikely to be a major threat to land, as we do have a lot of prolonged troughing out across the mid-Atlantic and northeast coastline, and as this trough begins to interact with whatever area of low pressure that does form near the surface, it's likely going to shear apart that upper level system, and any remnants could begin to move into the Atlantic provinces of Canada, but it would likely do so as a non-tropical system with only some minor shower and storm activity. So we're looking fairly good in the Atlantic at this time. As we move back into the eastern Pacific, we can see the very broad area of low pressure that the Hurricane Center was highlighting to the south of Mexico, and any surface circulation at this time is very weak, so any tropical cyclone development is likely going to be very slow to occur, and the enhanced infrared shows that the thunderstorms are very disorganized at this time, but the water vapor shows that overall the wind shear values do not appear to be terribly high, and the upper level wind shear charts from the University of Wisconsin confirms that we do have moderate upper level ridging situated to the south of the Mexican coastline. So combine this with favorable water temperatures, and that area of low pressure will likely be very slow to develop, but it should go on to become the next tropical cyclone of the eastern Pacific season. Much of the southwest United States has been dominated by ridging in the mid to upper levels, which has resulted in above average temperatures, and this same ridge could allow for that tropical cyclone to the south of Mexico to remain on a more westerly heading for the next 3 to 5 days. Thereafter, it will be interesting to see whether or not this ridge begins to break down. If it does begin to break down, then anything to the south of Mexico could begin to make a more gradual bend toward the north. The Day 5 forecast from the ECMWF model shows the ridge hanging tough across northern Mexico and the Baja Peninsula, along with our developing tropical storm to the south of Cabo San Lucas. However, by days 6 and 7, we begin to see the ridge starting to weaken just a little, and that allows the storm to take a turn more toward the north. This could open up the door for at least some type of southern Baja Peninsula landfall, or at least some type of effects from this tropical cyclone, but this is a 5 to 7 day forecast. The sea surface temperature profiles around this area complicates the forecast even more. If any tropical cyclone hugging the Mexican coastline takes a more northerly track within the short term, then that would allow it to stay over warmer waters, thus making a more significant impact along the Baja Peninsula. Otherwise, if the storm stays on a west-northwest heading for a prolonged period before taking a gradual turn toward the north and then northeast, it would have to weaken substantially before reaching the coastline. So it is evident that the ECMWF model is advertising a more northerly and stronger solution, whereas the latest run from the Canadian model is showing little in the way of development until the storm continues to move in a general west-northwest fashion away from Mexico, including the Baja Peninsula. By day 6, you can see that the remainder of the tropics are fairly quiet, although it is trying to develop an area of low pressure in the southern Gulf of Mexico before showing a turn more so towards South Florida. However, the Canadian model has the tendency of overdoing such areas of low pressure. Also, when observing the latest Nadine forecast, the Canadian model, much like the other model guidance, is showing a southerly turn within the next 24 to 48 hours, followed by a mid to upper level trough fully capturing the system and then pushing it off toward the northeast toward Europe as an area of extratropical low pressure. The latest GFS model forecast appears to be a compromise between the Canadian and European solutions in the eastern Pacific. The GFS is developing the tropical cyclone, but it shows more in the way of intensification within the next 5 to 7 days, along with a gradual turn toward the north. If it were to take this exact track, then the sea surface temperature profile near the Baja Peninsula would come into play quite significantly. Elsewhere, the tropics are forecast to remain generally quiet, with the one key difference between the Canadian and GFS run is that it's keeping Nadine in the eastern Atlantic, it misses the connection with the trough, and it's left to meander around the northeast Atlantic for quite some time. So the Azores Islands should keep up with the progress of Nadine. Interests along the southern Baja Peninsula near Cabo San Lucas should be keeping an eye on that area of low pressure to the south of Mexico, but otherwise the deep tropics are looking fairly quiet. The system to the east of Bermuda should be no threat to land even if it were to become a subtropical cyclone, and we still do not have any agreement between the models indicating that the MJO would soon become another enhancing phase for tropical cyclone development in the Atlantic Basin. So we're not looking too bad in the tropics on this late Wednesday. We will have another video update posted at 28storms.com by Thursday evening.